Thanks for joining us on Bent TV and welcome to people of all genders, including, but not limited to, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Sally Goldner, my pronouns are she, her. Tonight we're talking about a topic which we admit can be challenging, but it's one we've got to start talking about, and it is the issue of lateral hostility. Got a great panel of guests to join me on that. We have Patrick, Lisa and Erin. What is lateral hostility? Wikipedia tells us it's where people take out their perhaps frustration and whatever on each other rather than looking at the real adversary. And it's understandable how it can happen. You know, we all face discrimination, we can get run down, that sort of thing, and if we've got multiple facets, that can be the same. I, for example, am trans, bi, have a mental health issue called cyclothymia. I'm a country and western fan, so I cop all sorts of prejudice of both kinds. Seriously, it's a really difficult issue, and thinking about this, we could sit and give mountains of examples, but we'd rather try to just set up, how can we set up a process where as a community overall we can start talking about it and then perhaps finding solutions. And we're not going to find the answers in this segment because no one's really drilled into this carefully. But we're trying to get the conversation going.
Well, let's do the quick disclaimer about using the term lateral hostility.
Well, that's a good point too. I do need to acknowledge my privilege as someone of white Anglo-Saxon background. Lateral hostility is overwhelmingly one that comes from Indigenous communities, people of colour and so on. The thing is, we just haven't come up with a better one where to say the central focus is rainbow communities yet. And so we will use it, and if someone has a better one, you can get in touch with this program.
Please tell us.
Please tell us. But yeah, we've got to talk about these issues if we'll say double standards, where a group that faces discrimination then dumps it on someone else, or it can happen within trans and gender diverse for a long time. For example, and we'll just mention it briefly, you know, some people who had surgery thought they were the real trans people and so on. Yes, we've all had a cringe here. We should have given more content warning. Seriously though, we wanted to focus on how we can get a safe space going on this. How can we start having these conversations as calmly as possible? I'd be the first to say I'm not going to guarantee I could do it 100% calm either.
One of the biggest causes of lateral hostility, in my opinion, is that we are all so traumatized. We are all so traumatized.
It's raw nerves that you're rushing on.
So when we try to interact with each other, when that doesn't go really easily, or if something's confusing or scary, we're having a traumatic reaction to things, and that's no one's fault. Like, that's just how trauma affects people. And so I feel like any way of moving forward on eliminating or at least lessening lateral hostility has to start with some kind of care and acknowledgement of that trauma, and getting people to acknowledge that they have it and that the other people they're dealing with also have it.
Yeah, I think that's always been something that's concerned me when wishing to bring up the idea that lateral hostility has occurred to me or just generally, is due to the fact that because we are dealing with all marginalised people or people who have been through difficulties, it can often be, even just to say, this hostility has been given to me. Oh, but they've been through so much as well. I don't like. I get what's happened to them. So I don't want to suddenly be the one with the problem when they've had this go as well. Like, as if, like, in order to talk about it, you'd then just be laterally hostile yourself.
Yeah. Well, that's and you're a really interesting example of that, because one of the, I guess, most common or commonly known or perceived lateral hostility is the cisgendered homosexual male and misogyny. You know, the one who's like, vulva's gross.
Yay.
Like,
love hearing that as trans man.
They're amazing. They're so great. I've never met one I didn't like, even the messy ones, especially the messy ones. You, as a cisgendered male, a lot of people would be like, oh, no. But you would also face so much lateral hostility being a bisexual man, because as we all know, bisexuality in men doesn't exist.
Well, exactly right, and I'm a ghost.
And you just haven't chosen a side yet.
But of course that's always been the issue, hasn't it? Is that, like, I've received that bi erasure, but also I have lived a life that has been unbelievably privileged. So how could I possibly in this situation even begin to complain about lateral hostility towards me when the people who I might be receiving the hostility from have been through more than I have.
Just because you are privileged in some ways and oppressed in others doesn't negate either one of those things. Like having a very privileged life doesn't negate any hostility you encounter. You know, like I wish it did.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
You know,
You've really good points, because we've all got some, you know, I wouldn't say all, I shouldn't say all as in 7 billion people, you know, there's obviously varying degrees, and I mean other forms of privilege I have. I've always had a roof over my head. I've never been incarcerated and so on. So we've got this mix of some of us have some privilege and some of us have faced lateral hostility and negativity, etc. And it can be, there's a challenge that one minute you can be in the position of speaking, let's say for your own group, and then you've got to switch to being an ally and being empathic to someone else and walking beside them. And of course, you know, I can speak for trans issues, say trans issues generally. Yes, we need better birth certificate laws in Victoria, but I can't obviously speak for, say, trans people of colour. That's not my role. I have to be an ally. So there is that combination of one minute, you know, you've got some privilege, and the next minute you've got. How then do we manage that? How do we utilise it?
I think with bucket loads of self-awareness. Like I'm non-binary, but I'm also femme-identifying. And so while it's not a microaggression, it's a fairly significant aggression of people automatically assuming that I'm cisgendered because I'm femme-presenting and assigned female at birth and socialised as female. So I get why they do that, and that's fair. But it bloody sucks so hard.
yeah. I feel like it's almost like code switching, right? Like you've kind of got to keep in mind that you have all these multitudes of experiences and you need to switch between the relevant experience at any given time. Like becoming aware of when you are in one mode and when you are in another and when you need to change. You know, I also think that, you know, if we're going to move forwards, I actually think one of the best things we can do is try to have some good faith towards each other. And that goes in every possible direction. I mean that, like, you know, I mean, the classic thing, right, is if you're called out, you should take that as a compliment because people care about you.
Yes.
Like, you know, and so, but understandably, if you do get told, oh, you did something horrible, your reaction is to get defensive, you know, and so we have to give people a little bit of space to get through that while not letting them off the hook for it either, you know, and like if it's very complicated, but I feel like if we all have a little bit of good faith and assume the best of each other and at least start there. That obviously doesn't end it doesn't end there, but I feel like it's a good starting position.
And it's the target theory. So that's what I was going to say before, because I've got cis passing privilege, then I have to be very aware that my trans friends who don't necessarily pass have it worse, and just understanding that, yeah, we all have other forms of privilege and things. Like I get, you know, really angry at cisgendered homosexual men who are gay, who are misogynist, and they're like, oh, they've got all the privilege. And then remember, oh, hang on, they couldn't get married like a couple of months ago almost. And so, yeah, just coming at it with remembering everyone's context.
Yeah.
And I'm always trying to shorten my reactionary window. So when someone says to me, hey, you did this thing and it's bad, your immediate reaction, because you're not a bad person,
right,
is to justify it. And, oh, but I didn't mean it. It's like, wait, don't say that, because whatever you did mean doesn't matter because it didn't come through like that. So think about what the person's saying, and you can have this dialogue in your head of like, yeah, but I didn't mean to because I was just being, yes, but that's not how they read it. So what you mean needs to be clearer, and let them help you do that.
And if the vast majority of people aren't thinking along those lines when they get called out, imagine how, like, I think accommodating you need to be when calling someone out who might not be thinking like that. Like it feels like against what you want to do, but in order to make change or just be a point of contact for someone's future change, it's like you've got to give them the room they need to be able to hopefully have their mind changed.
And this is actually a really good time to come back to that whole overlapping privilege and oppression thing, because, for example, I have so much energy to yell at people about racism because I'm white, so I don't have to deal with that on an individual level.
I do that with
and
vegans.
that means that my it's more my responsibility to yell about that, because I have the time and the energy, and I know they will take me seriously, and I have the ability to soften it in a way that they will listen to me. Whereas if I get upset about a trans issue, I can't necessarily summon that softness to get that across.
Yeah.
Like, I think allyship is really important on this issue.
Looking out for each other, but then also giving them the space. So not talking over them.
Yes.
By me saying like, no, trans masc people need to this.
Right.
But being like, you reckon trans masc people need to be this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh almighty, we could go on all night and all day tomorrow, but we've made a start. It's been fantastic. If anything has been upsetting or triggering, please contact Q Life, including Switchboard. And thanks once again to Patrick, Lisa and Erin.